Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar by the Institute of Leadership and Management, Collaboration, Building Networks. My name is Nicholas Lynch. I'm a consultant working with the Institute of Leadership and Management and I'll be chairing today's webinar. It's my great pleasure to introduce Kate Cooper. Kate is the Head of Research, Policy and Standards at the Institute of Leadership and Management, where she shapes an innovative research program aimed to inform, inspire and impact the practice of great leadership. Kate joined the Institute after a career as a senior academic in a university business school, where her focus was on strategy, leadership and professional development. Kate's a conference keynote speaker and provides expert commentary on a range of topics arising from the Institute's research agenda. She's regularly quoted in regional, national and international media and has appeared on both BBC television and radio, and she has a regular column in Dialogue Review, the business magazine for leaders. So Kate's very well placed, I think, to talk to us today about collaboration, building networks. Kate, can I hand over to you?
Thanks very much, Nick, and thank you to everybody for joining us this afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to talk about building networks. It's something very close to my heart. Those of you who are new to the Institute of Leadership and Management, a particular welcome to you. We are running this series of 49 webinars organised around our own dimensions of leadership. So here they are. I think for too long we thought about leadership as being very close to vision, somebody having a vision and then somehow making that vision happen. But of course, there's so much more to leadership than that. There's the need to achieve, to deliver results. There's the need to take responsibility, to own what you're doing. And we hear increasingly, I think, about how authentic leadership is important, how much we value it. I was talking to one of the biggest employers in the UK recently, and they've conducted some research at all levels of managers within the organisation, saying, what do you expect of your manager? And the results were overwhelming. What we expect of our manager is consistency, but integrity. And of course, that's so important to authenticity. But today our focus is going to be collaboration, where we're going to be looking particularly at how to build networks. And of course, collaborative leadership has become more important. The more complex organisations become, the more complex economies, interconnections between and across countries. We need to collaborate in order to be effective. Some of you might have been listening this morning to the webinar on team working. And of course, that idea that 1 + 1 = 3 is fundamental to great collaboration. We see many components to collaboration. I mentioned team working already, and I'm going to be talking about networks, but of course, collaboration involves very many more parts, and we do hope you'll follow the other webinars and look up at the resources we have on our website. So, building networks. I was asked at an interview what I thought was a great networking. What did I consider great networking to be? And I said, I think I have succeeded at networking when I've introduced somebody to somebody else and they've got together and found they've got something in common, they can work together, and that success came about because of the introduction I made. That to me is great networking and must have resonated because it was the third interview and I got the job. But a collaborative leader really understands the value of internal and external networks, and I will be talking about both of those this evening. There's really three things to think about when we're talking about networks. Why we should network in the first place, how to go about it, what you do when you get there and want to network, and then all sorts of networks we might want to access. So I'll talk about each of these components and then also challenge some of the myths, I think, that go along with what we think about networking. Traditionally, I think if you mention networking to people, they think, oh yes, that's about finding people to do business with. And the definition there from Laura Hines is, yeah, it's about that. We find somewhere that furthers our business interests. But those of us who aren't customer facing or not so commercially focused might belong to networks that are for something else. And that's where we go to our networks to find out new things, to know that we're going to meet people who are interested in what we've got to say, have knowledge views, ideas that we find interesting as well. We exchange those. And in testing out our ideas, in talking to other interested people, of course, they get better and they develop a new life of their own. But these aren't the only benefits to networking. If you network, if we take it at its simplest state, is talking to somebody you haven't met before and trying to arrive at something that you have in common. That increases your confidence. And often at work, we have to speak to people we haven't met before, and we're not necessarily in networking mode. But being able to do that when you're in a new project team or with new members of staff, or indeed if you're new in an organisation, brilliant way of building your confidence in doing that. I've already spoken about how networking is great for generating new ideas, talking to people who know where you're coming from, who understand your industry, your sector or job role. And then that does lead to a wider pool of contacts and business connections. Now, we are all part of other people's networks. Even if we resist the notion of networking, other people will consider us as part of theirs. And of course, networks change because people leave, they change careers, they move, they have life-changing events. So in order just to keep our networks at the same size, what we need to be doing is constantly thinking about refreshing them. Another thing that's increasingly important for networking, of course, is building your professional profile. For many of us, that's how we look on LinkedIn, but of course your reputation goes everywhere with you. And if people have met you at networking events, they're more positively disposed to hear towards you when they hear about you and a third party perhaps talks about you. So what we're really doing when we're networking is we're sharing our knowledge and expertise, and in doing so, developing our skills and other people's. And I think if we can hold on to that actually networking is about giving your knowledge and skills, your time, your energy, your introductions. And from that, you get a huge amount of satisfaction from helping others. And if that is how you start your networking, that's the position you're coming from, you're going to be so much more successful at it than if you're starting from the position of, well, what's in it for me? There are so many myths about networking, and I think the first one I'd like to dispel, I hope, is that somehow networking is for extroverts. Extroverts, as we know, get their energy from people, from conversation. They recharge their batteries in the company of others, whereas introverts recharge their batteries, their energy, internally. But of course, you can be an extrovert and also very shy. You can be an extrovert and really lacking in self-confidence. Similarly, you can be an introvert who's not in the least bit shy and very self-confident. So, of course, it's not just for extroverts. Another myth, networking seems to be an extra. It's a nice to have, but it's not a must to do. Actually, as I've said, when we're at work, when we're in organisations, when we're anywhere, we are engaging with our networks, whether they're formal or informal. So to be doing that consciously and to realise the huge potential that it offers us is really part of our real work. Networking has a bit of a bad game. I've talked about the people who sort of turn up and what's in it for me. It's not about manipulation or Machiavellian use of influence. It is helpful because people know you, you build up your professional profile. But if you're thinking about who should I talk to, I only want to talk to the right people, I'll only speak to people who've got something I want from them, then that's very shallow and rather a short-term approach. And it's done genuinely when you are looking to gain some satisfaction from what you can bring to the network, then you will not be insincere and you will not be manipulative. But again, we have all been to those networking events, I'm sure, where certain individuals go around and seem to be just collecting business cards. And somehow the more business cards you come away with, the more successful a networker you've been. I mentioned already that I think we're in networks whether or not we know it. We've identified 3 types of network here. I think the operational one's really internal in the organisation, but that's everybody in the organisation. It's the people on the front desk, it's people in media, it's the cleaning staff, it's the refectory staff. They're all important to how well we get our jobs done. They all have a contribution to make and therefore should be treated as a member of our network and not ignored or dismissed because they don't immediately align with our immediate objectives. Again, we have personal networks, and if we find those diminished, I think the onus is on us to actually work very hard to, again, with the same sort of approach. How can I help my friends? What have I got to offer my family? What satisfaction am I going to gain from contributing to this network and investing in them just as we would our operational networks at work? The strategic networks, and these are more likely to be external. To me, they're where you're looking to see what's coming up next, what's happening in the future, where the innovation, where the trends are going. And then, of course, it's great to talk to people who have insights, as indeed you do, that you bring to those sorts of networks. So rather than getting too prescriptive, I think just to be mindful that whenever we're interacting with each other, with other people, we are, in a sense, or have the potential, of course, to be networking. So when you're trying to analyse your need to network, and I hope most people are sort of accepting that actually it's happening around you, whether or not you choose to consciously engage with it, you really need to ask yourself 5 questions. Be quite clear about what your purpose is. Do you want new insights? Do you want a broader support network? Maybe you want more friends, more social support. Maybe you want to get outside your organisation, find out what's going on in the external environment. Then who can help you do that? Going back to the unconfident, shy extrovert I mentioned a few moments ago, who can help you network? Who's got some experience of this? Who is not so shy and more self-confident that can go with you? Always watch the people that you think are great networkers and learn from them. What goals have you have? And I would encourage you to be ambitious here. It might be something as massive as a career change, working in a different country. What are your goals and how can you expand your networks in order to achieve the goals that you want to? So don't be mean with yourself, be ambitious, reach, aim high and find the people who can, the networks that you can access to support you doing that. Think very much, as I've talked about, the importance of profile and presence and your online brand, if you like. Think about how you want to present yourself and when you're going along and what is it that makes you an active listener. What is it? Where do you get your energy from? How are you going to be the best you when you go to these networking events? But again, if you focus more on about what you've got to bring and what you've got to offer than what you're going to get, you're going to be a much nicer person to engage with. I think many of us have been to so-called networking events, and I think there's nothing more I find more excruciating than that time on the agenda when it says something like 6 o'clock to 6:15 networking. And it's like, well, how do you do that? What am I supposed to do? And you want to network, but you're in a room full of people who are actually maybe suffering in a similar way than you are. So when you go and you start networking, you've got to have a real plan and a real MO as to how you're going to do it well and do it successfully. And I think even if you've been at a great event, you might have been at a conference where you've been on the table with people that you've really enjoyed their company and you all swap cards, swap contact details, follow up, do keep in touch with these people and not just, as the second point says, when you need something. It's too late then. You haven't built a relationship. You're not reaching out. You haven't made that important offer of what can I bring to the network. You can connect with the wrong people, as it were, with all the right intentions. So go back to your goals and aspirations. What are you in this network for? I mean, I personally get drawn in often into things that really are not absolutely relevant at this point in my life, because I get drawn in by something that I find compelling and interesting, and in that moment it's a great thing to do. But really do evaluate whether that's the right network for you in order to achieve the goals that you've specified. When people do give you help, which might just be an introduction, I know LinkedIn has that you're able to introduce your contacts to each other and add that sort of personal note, because of course your contacts are really part of your reputation. So anybody that contacts with one of your contacts is really recognizing or counting on you to have good and trustworthy contacts. Do make sure that you help others first. I think for example, some of the LinkedIn groups, that one of the requests from the moderators is that you actually give something, you post something, you offer something before you actually ask. But of course you are in a network because you want to have reciprocal relationships. So just joining a network when you're always giving and not in a position to actually ask for help, advice, support, whatever you want, is another mistake of networking. How to get the most out of your network? I think it's a cliche, but you do get out what you put in. And the most important thing for me here is this notion of investing. When you've been to the conference I've just talked about and you've been on a table with other people, put aside some time afterwards, not only to make sure you connect with them, whether that's via LinkedIn or whether you send them an email saying how nice it was to meet them, or think of something nice that you can offer them, whether it's an invitation to another event, whether it's an article that you think that they'll find interesting. Really try and build that relationship so that you're giving before you're expecting to take. And this can be absolutely time consuming. I don't think there's a shortcut to this. Even if you meet a couple of people, fantastic rapport, you still have to follow up and keep it going. I don't want to emphasize the importance of LinkedIn or how useful it is rather than important, but those things about people's birthdays or when they've got a new job or when they post something, there are so many opportunities to build up your social capital there with the people in your network, so that when you're in a position to request assistance, they know you, they are positively disposed towards you because you've been interested in them. And I said, this isn't a manipulation, because of course you have given your time and you have brought them something which is interest, and that you've read their posts and you've been interested in the fact that they've moved jobs, got a promotion or whatever. That's really coming from a genuine place. So when you're asking for help, as I say, they've got really positive feelings towards you. So also, when help is offered, accept it graciously. If somebody sends you, treats you like I'm advocating you treat other people, thank them. Even if you think the article, isn't of why did they send me this? Why would they think I'd be interested in this? People are just reaching out to you, receive things graciously and thank them. And then, of course, when you get some help that really does deliver something close to your goals and aspirations, do acknowledge, give them all of the credit back again, because of course it was that contact that put you in the position to be able to benefit from participation in that network. So here, we could have many rules, couldn't we, for how to be a great networker. I think we'll go through some of them now. I think, as I said at the beginning, you have to do it to get better at it. I think you can stay at home, write a great networking plan, and that can all go out of the window when you're actually in the situation. As we all know about plans, they're great until life takes over. But having a purpose, so that goes back to being able to access networks that that there are people there you'd like to speak to, or there are people in that network who would like to hear from you. So be really clear without being too manipulative, as we've spoken about before, about why you're going there. Experiment, vary your approach. Sometimes a general opening gambit in conversation works, and sometimes people want something far more focused and just about the event. Often if you're running events where people are supposed to network, that horrible embarrassing moment, do something that enables them to start talking to each other. And that's why if you're running any events where you want people to network, never ever have them sitting theatre style. Always having them sitting round tables, always have something for them to do and to talk about. It doesn't have to be long or take up all of the time, just that breaking the ice. Do help people network. Going up to people and introducing yourself. So of course, have a practice of how do you introduce yourself in a few seconds. People love being asked questions about themselves. And more importantly, I suppose, you ask the question, but you also are prepared to listen to the answer. Be proactive. I say if you're building up your confidence and you're getting better at it, then you can experiment with new approaches and you can do things that you haven't done before and ask questions in meetings, at seminars. As I say, go up to groups of people, because really they're all at those events, hopefully, because they want to meet new people and expand their networks as well. I think at the bottom there, you're talking about saying thank you, offering. I think there have been recurrent themes that I've been talking about. But that building and establishing trust, you can only do that by investing time in the relationship. You might meet somebody and you feel an instant rapport, but how do you know that you're going to trust them? That emerges over time. And of course, you will learn from your experience here. So if we finally thinking about if networking is being about being genuine and authentic, building trust and relationships and seeing how you can help others, I think a great way to start with this is being really honest with yourself about what you've got to offer. And by honest, I mean, I don't mean modest. I mean, thinking, well, I've got X years experience in this, or I know about that. I've just read this. I'm really up to date with developments in my field. I'm part of a knowledge network. And this is how we share knowledge and share information. Write the longest list that you can think of all the great things that you can bring to the network. And when you've finished writing what you think, ask other people to add to that list. Really important that you recognise the gifts that you are bringing and that you're willing to share. So rather than starting from the what you want point of view, start from what you can bring. And as I say, do not be modest here. Really try to make that the longest list that you can. And then when you take that to the networks, you'll be overwhelming people with offers of help, knowledge, expertise and insight. But then of course, the cautionary note there is don't then take it as an opportunity just to transmit how wonderful you are to others. I'm thinking more there of building your own confidence in the fact that your participation is really important and useful. And I think going back to what I was originally saying, don't worry about what's in it for you, worry about how you can help and connect other people, and then you are a genuinely great networker. And then of course, you will then begin to reap the benefits of that networking. We have so many resources. Those of you who are members of the Institute of Leadership and Management, there are more information about the how to and not to do of networking on our website. If you're not a member, please do consider joining, but there is freely available, as in addition to this webinar, there's also a Leadership Essentials which summarizes all the things that I've been talking about this evening. So thanks very much for your attention, and I'm hoping that there will be some questions.
We do. Thank you, Kate. Thanks for taking us through that presentation and sharing your experience. We do have a few questions. I think you started to address this question actually just at the end there, but there's a question around how do I actually break the ice, as it were? You know, I want to start doing this. I want to start to you know, I'm at an event and I want to start to talk to people, but I just don't really know what my opening gambit should be. How do I sort of, you know, there's somebody I don't know, I've never met them before. How do I sort of start there?
I think the best lesson I learned there was actually being away with a group of MBA students. And we were in a restaurant in Spain, and a group of 20 odd of really beautiful young girls came in and all went into a room. And one of the students, who happened to be a male student, immediately went in to talk to them. And his colleagues, his peers were saying, how did you do that? And he said, as long as you're prepared for rejection, then what's the worst that can happen? They won't talk to me. And I think you have to sort of put your own embarrassment to one side. What's the worst thing that can happen? Especially in the UK, that somebody's going to be rather abrupt. Nobody's going to say, go away, how dare you talk to me? Nobody's going to say, well, call yourself a networker. You know, the worst that can happen is that it's a shorter conversation than you would have hoped for. And the best that can happen is that you build a rapport. So really think about, so you're embarrassed for 10 seconds. Not very nice, really not that big a deal. And of course, the next time you do it, you're embarrassed for 5 seconds. And in the end, you just actually, if you go back to your list of why you're a great person to connect with, actually it's their loss. Because if somebody isn't welcoming and doesn't want the exchange, well, what are they doing networking? You know, really do be kind to yourself, but keep trying.
And you talked a lot about conferences and networking at conferences. Do you have to meet the person in order to start networking? Can you start a network on LinkedIn? You know, can you how do we do that where you don't know the person but you want to reach out to them in the virtual world?
Well, as I've talked about LinkedIn a lot, haven't I? I think there, of course, those groups are brilliant, aren't they? That you've got immediately a number of people that you know have got an interest in the subject. And my advice there would be, don't join a group with 25,000 people in it. You know, try and find a group that's got a few hundred people in it, where you have the opportunity to really make an impact. And what actually seems to work best on LinkedIn, for those of us that use it, is if you put a genuinely authentic video up there, not very long, that just talks about your commentary on something that's important in your area of work. That you might have read something or you've watched something, but just put something out there. You know, that my advice is always, you start giving before you start looking to take something back.
So then people reach out to you, they start the network by reaching out to you.
Yeah, and I think also, again, you want to build your confidence. So there's nothing wrong with actually encouraging your personal contacts, your personal network. Oh, please have a look at my LinkedIn post and like it.
Yeah.
You know, to be quite humble and about what you want and quite honest about what you're doing it for. And people like helping people ultimately. It releases a hormone that makes us feel good.
And just on, because you did talk about LinkedIn quite a bit, is there a right number of people that you should have a network on in LinkedIn? Is it hundreds? Is it thousands? Is it people you must have met?
Well, it depends on where you're starting out, are you, in your LinkedIn journey? I mean, I think when people first start out, as I'm sure all of us have had requests from people that we're wondering why they're requesting. I think, again, it's about investing. So if somebody asks to connect with you and you're not sure why, write them back. So, thanks ever so much for the invitation. I just wondered, why you thought it would be a good idea to connect with me. And when I made a New Year's resolution, I think a couple of years ago, that I would do that. Anyway, I wouldn't, refuse, but I would explore. Similarly, when you're asked to connect with people, when you send it always says, it doesn't actually on your phone, but it does on a laptop. It'll say, add a note. add a note, explain, because not only does it explain to that person that it makes them feel specially chosen, but also it enables you to remember them.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing more worse than having, connections on LinkedIn, you've got no idea where they came from.
Yeah. Okay, just one final question then. The Institute of Leadership and Management, do you run networking events, or how would you encourage members of the Institute to network?
We actually have a conference coming up in the end of June, our AGM and conference, where you can obviously meet other members. We do run events around the UK. They're invariably free to our members, so do please come along. We run them in collaboration with CIPD, the Manchester Metropolitan University, etc. So it's really always worth keeping an eye on our website to see what's coming up next. And indeed, of course, we promote other events that we think people might find interesting. But really, I can't urge people enough to go along, give it a go, know that you're not going to be great at first, but also be totally confident that you can get really good in not a great amount of time.
Great. Thank you, Kate. And thank you everyone who's dialed in to today's webinar. On behalf of the Institute of Leadership and Management, I'd like to thank Kate Cooper again for her excellent presentation and for answering our questions. And thank you for joining today. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Great. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.